Here we are, or are we here? Do. Is there
It says you're
anybody
waiting.
out there?
Okay, there you go.
Here
You're
you are,
on.
or are we here? Yeah, it's a little bit. All right. Is the chat? Hello. Good evening, everybody. This is, you might say, a broadcast of what I like to call Heretics Anonymous. Kind of sort of came with the name, kind of impromptu. I know the name is not originally mine. I remember Robert Price, of all people, was having a Heretic Anonymous, you might say, meetup down where he was and where, well, heretics would meet. And I've heard it before, but I thought we'd have our own Heretics Anonymous here on YouTube and maybe start something new with guests and so forth. But with us, definitely having a pleasure, we've got Vance the Moondog. How you doing, Vance?
I'm okay. We finally waded through the tech stuff and managed to get this much running, so
Yeah,
we're good.
that's something we have to do. And we've got Alex Rivera with us. How you doing, Alex?
I'm good. I'm glad we're finally getting this going.
Yeah, the only thing I'm seeing is I'm not seeing the chat going, which I don't understand. I know I put enable live chat, but I don't see anything there. Do you guys see? Do you see anything, Vance?
No, I
Um,
didn't, but it said I wasn't logged in, so I'm going to look somewhere else here.
Huh. Very strange, because I'd love to get some questions from audiences who are out there. So we're just not doing this willy-nilly, so we can get some audience participation. But I guess that's the whole point of having this for the first time. I mean, I'm looking here and it says enable live chat. So very strange. Well, we'll see. Hopefully maybe Vance or I can catch something
I'll
and
work on
we'll
it.
go from there. So I guess we want to start with you, Alex.
sure.
Looking at myself is just not fun. I'm going to shrink this for now. So, well, here we are. It's great to have you on. You've been on Aeon Byte a couple of times. Now you're here at Heretics Anonymous. So,
Yeah.
what do you think of this election that we're having today? Because, again, we want to try to make this more with the times and so forth if this goes well. What do you think of the election, or what do you think of the reality behind the reality of this election coming up?
Yeah, 2018 has been kind of a really strange year for me, but and also really see that also in the mainstream public arena too. Uh, I don't know, just things getting more. Uh, just a lot, I see a lot of hyperbole. Just see a lot of you know people kind of going nuts. It's just like the energy is just really reaching at this pitch point. So and and then there's this back and forth about the blue wave and the red wave with Trump, and then all the Antifa people and the social justice warriors and the beta males and the soy boys and the feminists, and then
And the
going
Proud Boys on the other side and all
yeah,
that.
they're going after the deplorables and the Trump supporters. Uh, I don't know. I don't. I really don't see a good outcome happening out of this. I may be wrong, but I mean, I see a lot of other people, like people who are involved in like conspiracy theories and or involved in the occult. They're talking about how there's going to be all these mass arrests of all of the deep state and or all the people involved in the Democratic Party, and that Trump is after them, the QAnon and all this stuff. So I mean, I don't know what's really happening behind all this, but I do think there's a lot of spiritual energy behind Donald Trump and also the alt right. They're really good at memeing, right? So a lot of it has to do with chaos and chaos magic, CAC and Pepe, and it also really seems it kind of seeps into the political arena. I've noticed ever since the election. So it's really hard to say what's going to happen, but I do suspect it's going to be a red wave and then a blue wave, kind of like there was this what's his name, Michael Moore. He was freaking out, and I just saw like one of his videos. He was very despondent and very depressed. Like, oh, we're all gonna lose. So yeah, I think he's probably right. So I mean, that's kind of like my short answer for that.
Yeah, I think, obviously, it's no secret about how I feel. Yes, the chat is on. I see some people. I see Baz. I see Samuel Hannah. How are you doing, Sam? Good to see you here. Yeah, I think I see Tim on Mythicism. Good to see you here, Tim. But and everybody else, thanks for joining. But I guess I already lost my train of thought. But I want to look things are more symbolical. Obviously, I am a post-partisan. I think if I am doubtful, if I have a clear conscience, I'm not going to vote on Tuesday. If my conscience gets a little bit polluted, I'm going to go down, and whoever's the incumbent, I'm going to vote against them, or I will vote Libertarian or Green Party. That's my thing. So I guess for all practical purposes, people will say I'm a puppet of Putin, and that's fine. Unfortunately, he's not paying me. He is not paying me very well these days, so I hope he sends some love down my way, or some hot Russian spies or something like that. Catherine Bach. But yeah, Alex, what I wanted to ask you, symbolically, how do you see things going? I mean, you say Trump is Mercury. I mean, like Robert Bonanno talking about how he's the trickster god, and he's here just disrupting everything to expose the underbelly of our country that probably has been rotting for a while, that probably needs a lot of fixing. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, there was that whole mass hexing that happened like a few weeks ago by the witches and like these leftist occultists.
Right.
Yeah. But it kind of goes over the head that, in a lot of communist and socialist countries, magic and the occult is actually outlawed.
Mm.
And also religion too, obviously. But magic and the occult is definitely a no-no in a lot of, China, North Korea, and so forth. I don't know about Russia, but I do think Russia is somehow involved in a lot of geopolitical scheming too. I think there is some truth to the Trump Russia connection. I don't know how deep that is, but maybe. But getting back to the Mercury angle, yeah, I mean, he has a lot of mercurial aspects. A lot of these witches were like, hexing him, but I don't know. It was like I kind of suspect, Mercury is actually just, laughing his ass off at all these, witches and occultists and social justice warriors, as they, try to, curse Trump. But I think it just makes him more powerful, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. Just like there's something going on behind him. I mean, he has a lot of, obviously a lot of personality. He has a lot of, guts. And I'm kind of nervous for the Democrats and see what they're going to do for 2020, because they're going to send like their little sacrificial lamb to slaughter, really, while Trump basically destroys them, And I hear all this talk about Hillary Clinton joining the, or actually joining, to the 2020 election again. So that's going to be a laugh and a half. But Trump as Mercury, yeah. Like Mercury is, he's obviously trickster god, and that's like basically his dark side, I guess we could call it that. But he does have a light side too. He's also the one that he reveals secrets to the aspirant or the initiate. It's typically in like magical circles. So Mercury is the one that that actually reveals the arcane secrets, and the kind of feel like
we see you, Vince.
Trump is a little bit like that. I'm not saying that he's an occultist, but he definitely has that. There is some sort of magical vibe to him. I mean, he's really, he's also a Freemason. A lot of people.
Yeah.
Trump is?
Wow.
Yeah, Trump is, yeah. And he, and he also he uses that symbol all the time, when he's sitting down in public.
Vagina?
Yeah, something like that. But it's basically kind of a code for some sort of code, I guess. Compass, a square, or something. the
Right,
uni
right.
symbol. Right?
Grab him by the uni symbol. Is that it?
Right. Yeah, but and then if you look at Trump's apartment, his very lush and luxurious apartment, it has all these symbols of Apollo and Zeus. So he's very much connected to the Greek gods. So Mercury's probably somewhere in there for sure, or in Hermes. So I don't know. It's like the more the media attacks him, and the more the left and the Democrats attack him, it seems like the more powerful it gets. Really, really strange. And it was happening during that 2016 election, and it's still continuing more and more. So no matter what they throw at him, he just somehow seemed to like dodge him like really quick. He's like kind of these kung fu, Masonic occult moves or something. I don't know what he's doing over there, but but what's that?
He's with Vance right now.
Oh yeah. Oh, there he is.
He's everywhere.
He doesn't look happy with me either.
Oh my God.
Uh-oh.
The Abraxas protect you. And I should say that we are all wearing our Abraxas. Vance has his Abraxas back. I've got my Abraxas shirt that I wear on the Abraxas brief, and Alex has just gotten an Abraxas ring, so that should protect you. So
kind of cool. I mean, you can barely see it, but I mean, it's black, but you can see something there. Yeah, there he is.
Wow. That's very nice. Yeah, I think, my view, and I mentioned this in the Inner Sanctum of Gnosis, I think the traditional ways of using traditional magic and spells against the right is not going to work, because I think the right is tapped into some dark archetypes, into some ancient forgotten gods. So they've gotten deeper in it. Oh my God, it's Keck behind Vance. Yeah, we keep summoning these things. And I think that's, like you said, they're more powerful and they're using their symbols well, but we'll see. I mean, I think it's fascinating to see these forces against each other, but I would agree with you, Alex, how it is right now, and hopefully the left will really dig deep into more ancient forces, and hopefully we'll have some sort of balance. Not this balance that I see, because obviously I still feel the corporate powers are behind both parties like puppets for the most part. But Vance, what did you take on this election and the reality behind reality?
Glad you asked. Okay. The way I look at it, it's very Gnostic. We're talking about the freedom of the individual versus the domination of the individual by this system. Okay. That's the real dynamic here. Now, we have forces on both what we call the left and what we call the right that are both have different styles of dominating the individual with the institution. Trump, I don't know for sure, but I think he's kind of trying to work against both of them in favor of the individual. Now, if you look at the legislation in Congress, it's all muddied up, so it's kind of hard to see what Trump really wants. But he is exposing people pretty much on both sides for what they are, including his whole staff, like Michael Cohen and all these other people that are, the big corporates. And I think if you look at it, it's not just in this country. It would be a mistake to think that this is limited to the United States. It's all around the globe. The immigration issues of dissolving national borders and so forth and so on. The Trump-Putin connection, I believe, is because Putin and Trump have something in common. They are against the globalization of whatever the hell is trying to make this one giant country, led by something like the UN or the Bilderbergers or whoever you want to point the finger at. So that kind of unites them from a conceptual point of view. I don't know if they're really united in terms of person to person, but I really think this is a fight for the globe to be dominated by some sort of global government. And the nationalistic governments may not be much better, but they're closer to the individual than the globe, because globally we'll have no chance of being represented. It'll be whatever the guys at the top decide is good for the whole planet. That's the kind of way I look at it. So politics is like this fight between Scylla and Charybdis. Do you want to, a centralized government to strangle you, or do you want a whole bunch of huge mega corporations to strangle you? Trump is not really a mega corporation guy. He's big, he has a lot of money, but he's not the corporate institution like, some of the other big, companies like Google or Boeing or whoever else you want to point at for a big company, Procter and Gamble.
Right.
So that's kind of the way I look at it. And you have to kind of sort out, you have to look at the principles and what's at stake, which is the continued domination of the human race by either by hook or by crook, by government or by corporation. Not too much difference between them. And then you got to look for the people that are looking between those two things. And that's the way I decode politics. And I'm not exactly sure, but it looks like everybody hates Trump from both sides more
Yeah.
than one other. So that's good. Somebody who's hated by both sides, they at least have a chance of trying to champion, human spirit, human individual, get rid of the archons. So that's my
good take. And with Mercury, the sword that divides, but unfortunately, as I've said before, divide and conquer is where we are, and that's really one of the best tools of the archons when you look at the Gnostic myths, is by splitting Adam and Eve and Sophia around. The more divided, people always say, well, the Gnostics were against procreation. I say, well, no, not really. I mean, if you look at even the Sethian ultimate family or state of being, it's the mother, the child, and the father. I mean, the Sethians show they like the idea of being against procreation. I always see is the great parable of fragmentation. When we fragment the more we fragment our minds, the worse it's going to be. And also, again, the more we're fragmented as people, the worse we're going to be. And I think, again, divide and conquer is how the archons are getting this country. I mean, like the other day, I was like hearing about Proud Boys and Antifa going at it. And I'm just thinking, I said, guys, I know you hate each other, but you both are against foreign wars. Why don't you come together for 10 minutes and stop the bombing of children and brown people in the Middle East? Stop the wars, because you believe in that. The extreme left and right would come together, go against enough of, helping all these Halliburtons and rich companies and so forth. The what they call military industrial. Stop the murder of children. Then you can come back and start beating each other up in Portland again. But at least, but of course, that's not what the archons want, because they want war, they want pain, they feed off, and they're going to make us fight. So, but I guess the question I had for you, Alex, moving back to you, and do you see in your research, are there any, might say, Illuminati or satanic powers controlling the upper echelons of the government? What is your research or your intuition showing you on this?
Well, I mean, you kind of have to follow the smoke. Where there's smoke, there's fire. As this old saying would go. I mean, I did research with Tracy Twyman on that Baphomet book like a few years ago, and the more I studied what all these Templars are doing, what according to a guy named Joseph von Hammer-Purgstall, he wrote a book or a long essay called Mysterium Baphometus Revelatum. But he was going on about how all these Templars were involved in like orgies or child sacrifice, kind of all the usual things that Gnostics were accused of back then, and witches and Bacchus worshippers, so on and so forth. So whether they really all did that or not, I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to say. But I do find that these types of practices are actually could very well be practiced by a lot of people, in the higher echelons of society. Now I know Pizzagate was considered, the big taboo conspiracy, and a lot of people, kind of dismissed it, it's a bunch of malarkey or whatever. But I don't know. It's just, I mean, there was even recently in the news, they found a body of a 15-year-old girl in the Vatican, or underneath the Vatican. I don't know if you heard of that.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's a connection there for sure. A lot of and even you see, Pope Francis, he's always doing the horn symbol. So a lot of people, and a lot of people like in celebrities, do that. Yeah, that, or they do the Illuminati eye, or all these spooky symbols. Yeah. So I mean, I guess you could say, oh, they're just doing it because of the, I don't know, some occult mystique or whatever. They're just trying to generate more buzz. But I don't know. They could very well be part of some sort of, secret society of some sort. And I think Tracy Twyman kind of goes into that with her work quite a bit, where she talks about a lot of rappers are involved in it. And of course, that's usually the case where you see all these videos saying, oh, yeah, Tupac and P. Diddy or B.I.G. Is that a pizza man?
Yeah, it's Mr. Pizzagate. That's the mascot. Sorry,
Yeah.
it's heavy stuff, so I have to laugh.
Yeah,
You know.
Like something out of an 80s show or something. Like,
is that from Spaceballs?
It's Pizza Hut from Spaceballs, I think.
Oh, right. I love that movie.
Not a laughing matter if Pizzagate's true, so I just want to say that.
Yeah, well, it's like it's kind of like that saying from the movie, "May the shorts be with you."
Right. That's
But yeah. But no, I just see a lot of a lot of dark stuff happening, especially when it comes to people who are in the higher echelons of power. I mean, they got to that point for a reason, right? Kind of have to think about that. And there's a lot of blackmailing that goes on, and then yeah, and then when you look at a lot of the research now that's coming out about I think there's supposedly like 30,000 indictments supposedly that, and then I think there was like that that sex cult, the NXM cult or something like that were indicted. And then there was like Anthony Weiner that was also indicted too. I think he's in jail, or no, he's actually about to leave jail actually now for like good behavior. But he has like a laptop that supposedly is like his life insurance, and supposedly reveals all sorts of secrets about what's going on with the Democrats and the deep state or other Republicans. So. Yeah, I do think there's a lot of there's a dark underbelly happening within politics for sure. Yeah, and then that's definitely involved with globalism, and then even the United Nations are going on about how they actually want to be our world government by 2030. So there's that you think about. So, and then you have Trump, going on about being nationalistic, and then you have CNN and MSNBC and freaking out over him, like, oh, I'm a nationalist. So yeah, I mean, globalism is okay, but I really don't see it, actually being a good thing. I mean, even if it actually does happen, like this supposed new world order, I think it's going to fail ultimately.
But that's what kind, right? What kind of order is the real question?
Right, like what if it's going to be a Brave New World or a 1984 kind of police state? Like, what are we talking about?
That's what it looks like right now to me.
Yeah, no kidding. And Alex, do you feel, as somebody who's Hispanic, do you ever feel blatant racism coming from the right or all those groups, or do you think it's overplayed or whatever? As a minority, how do you feel?
Yeah, that's a really good question. No one's really asked me that, but
Dime qué piensas de esto.
Yeah, sí, yeah. Ay, papi, ay.
Yeah, I can. I was born in this country, but I can't play the Hispanic. Sorry, I just know Spanish.
Yeah. I mean, no one's really been racist necessarily towards me. I guess I really wouldn't say I'm a Republican either, because I'm a independent. I'm a Brethren independent, but I don't know. I just notice a lot of I think bigotry, like a lot of not only bigotry in certain right wing white nationalist circles, but you also see that same kind of bigotry on the left too. They're the ones who they pretend that they're like very moralistic and for the people, but I mean, they really, I don't know. It just seems to me that they're very underhanded in how they approach with race, and they always use the race calling card. They do it all the time. They do it on CNN, And then you even see that Don Lemon guy, saying that all white men are, or white men should be rounded up or something like that, or something to that effect. So I'm like, oh, we're getting a little race baiting again here. So I mean, even that his the way he phrased it just made very little sense. So I mean, they're very hypocritical in how they approach race too. So I mean, you have Michael Cohen who was saying that, oh, Trump made all these racist remarks, but he never actually recorded it, And then he saw that thing with Hillary when she was actually talking about Andrew Gillum and Eric Holder, and she was saying that they all look alike. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of a double standard there with the Democrats,
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, Trump, he's hanging around with Kanye West. So I don't know. Kind of hard to say, but I think both sides are a little racist for sure. But Trump, but really in the left, it just seems like it's a lot more, to me anyway, more pronounced there. But I mean, if you go to websites like 4chan, obviously you'll see all these racist memes all over the place. But I think it's like the only places where you can actually do that, in other places, you probably got banned outright. I mean, just look at Alex Jones.
Well,
he got
banned. Family Guy.
Right.
He gets away with everything.
Yeah, he's like the pariah. He's like the guy that everyone hates.
Yeah, and for the record, people on the chat, if you want to ask questions, I'll be glad to field them. Just ask a question and who you want this question for, and we'll try to get them. What about you, Vince? Are we looking at spiritual wickedness in high places? I guess first I should say, yeah, with the pedo thing is I always liked Chris Hedges' book, Twilight of the Elite, because he talks about it's not a question of this group or that group or this minority or whatever. It's whenever you get people in complete power, whether it's Penn State football, the Catholic Church, anywhere else, where you get people who have a taste of that power, then comes an extreme desire for taboo, and that always translates into a desire, unfortunately, to damage children. And I have a feeling there's probably more spiritual to that. I do feel the cult of Moloch never really died, and somehow these demonic powers do thrive off of the essence and the suffering of children, and that translates into the elite, who are also playing with symbols. They're playing with powers they shouldn't be, and they basically slowly lose their souls. But anyway, let me know your take on this, Vance. And yeah, are we looking at spiritual wickedness in high places?
Yes, and you just told my thunder and convinced me ESP is possible, because that's exactly what I was going to say. That once you get that power, and once you're freed from the idea that there's something higher than you that might punish you later, which is what all the religions impose on people. I mean, a lot of people, including us especially, complain about the religions and how they're oppressing us and suppressing us and taking away our freedom. But there's two sides of that. There's certain people that if you give them their freedom and that they get power, then they decide, I can do anything and I can answer to nobody, and then they will respond to their most base urges sometime, unless they have some sort of moral compass inside. And I think it always usually has to, I wouldn't even say spiritual wickedness. I would say lack of spirituality, because in at least the way I define it, spirituality is about things that are beyond the material world, beyond just the physical, mechanical, robotic, sheep-like world. And so these people lose their way. They don't believe in anything beyond this world. The power that they have rests in this world, and at least until they start doing the black magic and all this, but that's another subject. But still, then they feel, and now you can prove that there's something going on up there by this. A certain percentage of people will have the proclivities for all these, cruel things to cause suffering. Why would the political class be an exception? So we know that a certain percentage of the people in the political classes, we don't necessarily know who, will be doing these things. So things like Pizzagate and other, political scandals, they're going to happen. And the only reason we didn't know it more in the past is because the press has started to cover things to further the message it wants to send out. So that's the way I look at it.
Good job. Yes. And thanks for the donation, Tekomuto. And I don't see any questions. A lot of chat, already some controversial stuff being sold in the chat, but so it is, and so it is. And since we're on the topic here, and all three of us are Abraxas, Alex, you were telling me about the Goetia, that it does call Abraxas a demon, or what are your take on Abraxas? Any insights on one of our favorite unfinished gods out there?
Right. Well, Abraxas, for those of you who don't know who that is, it's a Gnostic deity that associated with Basilides. He was a Gnostic teacher in the 2nd century. I guess you could call him a. Well,
Sorry,
at least
having Advance has got his special effects going. Show us.
You can tell me to stop if I'm distracting too much.
Yeah. For those who might not have audio, Vance has this really cool green screen with special effects. So we got Abraxas and Hillary and Trump and all these other bigger than life entities, if you would. Anyway, going out. Sorry.
Yes. Okay. No. Like I know the church father Hippolytus. He kind of quotes Basilides. I think he calls him the Great Archon. That and there's all these different lower angels that kind of emanate or beneath Abraxas, and even Yahweh and Jehovah is actually beneath Abraxas. He's like a lower angel in Gnostic cosmology. But getting back to the whole Goetia thing, yeah, I mean he's also it seems like a lot of pagan deities, not just Abraxas, are basically demonized or turned into a demon in the Goetia. You know, like Ashtar, or Ashtar or Ishtar, she becomes Ashtaroth. I mean, there's other ones that I can't really think of off the top of my head, but yeah, you definitely see
Dionysius and Pan, right?
Right, yeah, them too, yeah. So you see that in the Goetia, and then we're even talking about what's a Satanist anyway, right? So
that's the question. Yeah, we've been talking about, because you said you sometimes use they're ruled by Satanists and this and that. So I want to get some context, because Satan is such a umbrella term. It can mean somebody I don't like. It can mean a heretic. It can mean a hedonist. But the idea of like a Rosemary baby Satanist, kind of like I'll hail Satan or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Like those kind of people. It's kind of hard to say. Like, I mean, there's so many different sects. So like different groups are call themselves Satanists. There's the Church of Satan. There's the Temple of Set. There's the Satanic Temple has their own, Baphomet. They all worship, Baphomet. I mean, just for the record, I don't do any of that stuff. But I do seem to run into people who might even call themselves, I don't know, even Christian magicians, but really there's some sort of like a dark, sinister element to what they're doing. Even people involved in, I don't want to, make broad strokes or generalizations here, but people who are just a lot of people involved in hoodoo or spiritualism. I don't know. It just seems like you definitely get connected towards the dark side, if you will, because it's really hard to say who you're talking to, when you're conjuring a spirit, right? So you could very well be a demon, who knows? So, so people who are Satanists, I think really deep down, they're really involved in spirit conjuring in the Goetia. And so, in the Goetia, when you're conjuring a spirit, and then you're supposed to, make a pact with it. You see that quite a bit in different movies, like Hereditary, for example. It's a good movie about that. But yeah, I mean, it just seems like the occult is everywhere, Then you see that in politics, you see that in movies, you see it in music, and even like this NPC meme, to me at least, it kind of seems like it's just like a comedic take on demonic possession to me. Like, yeah, like I guess I'll go that way. So just like people, when you see all these blank gray stares, like just seems to me that it just really saying to me that yeah, the NPC meme is really about people who don't have any inner expressions, who just they follow anything that the rulers tell them to do or to think. That orange man.
Zombies, right?
Zombies, yeah. They're like the Hylics in Gnosticism.
Right.
And then you can call them like organic portals, or I think even like what's that one guy? I can't even pronounce his name, but he was a mystic. I think Aleister Crowley knew him. He was the author of The Fourth Way. I think I know who I'm talking about. Which one?
Talking about Gurdjieff?
Yeah. He talks about those kinds of people too. I think I posted a quote of him talking about that on my Twitter feed. I just don't remember exactly, but it was pretty interesting how he worded it. But this reminded me about the NPC meme. And then this whole thing about the caravan. I don't know. I mean, are they all rapists and murderers and criminals, or I mean, or is it good that they're all coming because CNN told us so? I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to say. But when you have all those amounts of people coming to the border, and then I don't know, I don't really see anything good coming from that either.
How do we go from Satanists to the people migrating from Honduras?
I don't know what you're talking about when you mentioned to me about the whole minority thing. It just I don't know, for some reason it came to me. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that. Yeah.
Okay, well, glad you mentioned.
But the Satanist angle, yeah, you see that quite a bit with a lot of the WikiLeaks emails, and people claim that John Podesta was involved in Pizzagate and all this kind of stuff. And then there was like one email they were saying that one of Hillary's emails. I don't know. I think it was I don't know if it was her or one of her aides, but she was saying that well, I just finished or I'm going to sacrifice a chicken to Molech or something like that. So
it could be a joke. I mean, that's something I would have said. I mean, there are people.
Right. It could be a joke. I mean, I don't know.
They're very poetic.
It could be real.
But
yeah, I know. It's pretty really weird what's happening. I mean, I really do think 2019 we're gonna see a lot of big surprises for sure. 2018, I think for me at least, has been a very interesting year for sure, and I think that will probably be more pronounced for everyone else. I think, well, not everyone, but at least the public at large, generally speaking. Yeah.
Right.
And then politics for sure, because the last 2 years of a president term in office is always like where he really goes for the punch, because you see that with you saw it with Obama, you saw that with Bush. So yeah, I mean it's going to be pretty crazy, especially after this election. I'm sure there's going to be more rioting from Antifa. I'm sure there's going to be more a lot of crazies, generally speaking. But ooh, is that Molech behind you, Vance?
Yep. Well, at least one rendition.
All right.
He keeps summoning all these dark powers. We're going to be screwed if we continue. Oh, no, not Keck.
He'll eat them.
Who needs Keck when you got Peck, right?
Right.
It's something else. Well, there was a question here, so I'm going to ask somebody in the audience. It's sort of scrolled up. Do you really think we live in something like the Matrix? Wait, first of all, welcome Vanessa. I invited Vanessa to join us. How are you doing, Vanessa? Can you hear us? Can we hear you?
Hello.
How are you? Good to see you here. Glad you're here. We need some Venus power here. Give a little balance to all this craziness. So so basically we've been talking about, I guess, parapolitics and the symbolism behind everything. So I'd love to get your take. What do you think about this election, and what do you think of the spiritual forces behind there? We're talking about how Trump might be Mercury, how the archons are dividing the country and the world. Are there Satanists? So we've been batting around a lot of ideas and concepts. What is your take?
Well, I wouldn't say Mercury, I would say Mars.
Hmm.
He seems to be very interested in going to war with everyone and everything.
Yeah, why not? It seems to me I would personally do. I think I would still agree with the trickster god myself or the force, but yeah, I think these days every president has to go to war with everything. But yes, in conflict with whatever moves. So and anyway, I'm going to ask you to this question. When somebody in the chat said, by the way, that's Vanessa Kindle. For those of you not, she's a great researcher and really an expert, especially things of ancient Sumeria, Gnosticism, and just a lot of cool stuff. Well, why don't I ask you this, Vanessa, right off the bat? Because we had an interview today with somebody who talked about the Anunnaki and the Sumerians. And of course, that's a very hot topic. Anunnaki, are these extraterrestrials?
I don't think so. I definitely would file them under the term gods, but I guess I'm probably biased.
So you don't think so? You would say, well, it's hard. There's kind of a fine line between gods and extraterrestrials these days.
I suppose, but I mean, given that they're largely focused on associations with things that are of this earth, like the wind and the rain and the earth itself and the sky, that one I could probably maybe see an argument for. But I mean, most of the Anunnaki are associated with, much like most deities tend to be associated with, things that are of the earth or things that come from the earth, like reeds or wheat.
And do you think we are, again, might as well answer this question and then do it a little round table. Do you think we humans are trapped in the matrix? Are we cast in this prison planet? Are we trapped? Or do you have a more, I'd say, benign cosmic versus a cosmic view on where we are as humans?
Well, I mean, I don't know of a way to get anywhere else. So I'm going to have to say yes. Though I don't necessarily think that it's necessarily all negative and just a black iron prison. I would more go with a sort of like monist. I don't know if it'd be monist or... Anyways, I would go with the kind of viewpoint of there being, good things and bad things, and it's all kind of a general mishmash of the two. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of what we make of it, because of our ability to utilize our will and creative faculties, we can make it, not the worst place in the world. But certainly if you just like go off in nature and try to live off the land, it's certainly not going to be a fun experience. So, and certainly there are oppressive forces. I don't think anybody who's paying any attention these days would disagree with that.
Well, so what about you, Vince? Are we trapped in the matrix? Are we in the black iron prison? Or is it something not as nefarious as that?
Well, I think ultimately, yes. But the problem is, if you imagine, like, say we're in a matrix and somebody's running the matrix. Well, are they in a matrix? And who's running their matrix, right? So it's like you wind up with the turtle. The turtle runs all the matrices, and it's turtles all the way up or all the way down. But I think what it is consciousness in its pure form and with pure ideas could pretty much create everything and anything. Anything that's imposed upon that is a restriction. And so it's a matter of the degree of restriction. I think down here, we are very restricted because the matter, energy, space-time universe restricts our location, restricts our ability to move things. I mean, we've created an entire society and depend on each other just to overcome the limitations of the physical world. And that's where a lot of
Certainly.
our political problems come from, that, right? And us appealing to the gods is an attempt to try to get an upper hand on that. Well, we figured the gods can move things around better, make things happen. So all of religion depends on that. So it's all a function of this prison. So definitely we've got this prison. The real question is what's beyond it for us and how many levels there are. Is there a kind of cool vacation universe that we can create in? Right. But if you think about it, supposing we're all ultimately powerful, and I say, Miguel, you want to create an Aeon Byte show for everybody, you know, all these little individual things in the universe, right? And say, I want to create an Aeon Byte, but we can't figure out what color Abraxas should be. Should be white, should be green. So then we have a cosmic fight, right, over Abraxases. And then before you know it, we have a split universe. Okay, Miguel goes off in his universe where Abraxas is white, and I go off in mine when it's green, and just multiply that almost infinitely, and you might wind up with what we have here. So the inability for the different separations of the one after it splits probably winds up creating something like this, where we're so restricted that nobody can really do anything without a huge effort to disturb anybody else. But then we start creating organizations to have the same effect, that have more power. And then so the organizations fight each other. So that's something I could say about it all.
Yeah, I like it. It reminds me of that movie, The Nines, where
Oh yeah,
going off. So yeah, Ryan Reynolds. So great movie, and I would certainly suggest it, and also very Gnostic. So coming to you, Alex, are we in the Matrix, or what? What is your view? Are we trapped in this world? Prison Planet, Black Iron Prison, Truman Show, Westworld, and I could go on and on. Lego Movie.
Right, right. Yeah, you know, it's a theme I've been researching for a long time. I mean, you see echoes of that even in the Bible, you know, when Jesus talks about, you know, let the dead bury their dead, or, oops, my thing's kind of falling here. And then and then when, you know, Paul talks about, you know, that there are, you know, powers of wicked powers in high places and in the heavens and so on and so forth. So it just kind of seems to me that what all these guys are saying, that yeah, we are kind of ruled over by different principalities and angels and hostile angels. And then at the same time, when you look at even in modern research, there's a guy named John Keel. He wrote a book called The Eighth Tower. I probably mentioned that to you, Miguel. But he was saying that we're basically slaves to something called the super spectrum, or spectrum, I should say, and that all religious, mystical, occult, and paranormal phenomenon comes from this super spectrum. And then he talks about the ultra terrestrials, and he also says that UFOs and aliens are just nothing more than manifestations of this super spectrum, and that also includes demons and angels as well, and even gods. Even says that he even goes so far to say that God and the devil are kind of working together. they're in cahoots. You know? Yeah. So I don't know. It just seems like that could very well be the case. And then he talks about the Mothman, obviously, with behind Vance there. And then he talks about you know, dinosaurs, and then he talks about the Sasquatch and Yeti, and he was saying in that book, The Eighth Tower, that the reason why we don't find dead bodies of Bigfoot or Yeti or aliens or whatever what have you is because they're really just interdimensional manifestations, you know, coming into our world, you know, and they actually. Like a Sasquatch, for example, actually melts when it dies, supposedly. So according to his research, it melts into a puddle. Weird. And then he was saying that the reason why he came to a lot of these conclusions was that they all emanated a smell. It's like this, you know, a sulfur smell. Like demons emanate a sulfur smell. Sasquatch did the same thing. Then there are, I think he talks about the vampires too, because they exist too somehow. So it's all kind of connected. He's trying to make his own big theory of everything, right? Then he was also saying that there's a eighth tower hidden in Antarctica that's somehow also controlling our power somehow, or controlling our world. Then he was also saying that there are like seven other towers over that exist in Asia, and they're all ruled over by no, they're actually each tower has some sort of satanic priest that's actually uttering occult curses and emanating that throughout the universe. And somehow that's controlling our reality somehow. So I don't know if any of that's true, but you never know. And then it also connects to Saturn. Go ahead.
Yeah, talk about Saturn. But what do you think? Do you think we're trapped in a matrix like a reality?
Who, me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I kind of suspect that's probably the case. I mean, as much as I like, Orthodox religion, I still think that we are ultimately in some sort of simulation, and we are kind of a slave to the powers, if you want to call it that. I mean, you saw that. You saw in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve, ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge. But in a way, I mean, I guess the Gnostic could say that the serpent was an agent of Sophia or Jesus or whatever. But at the same time, we look at the Apocrypha of John, talks about how, the serpent is really was sent by, Yahweh or Yaldabaoth, as the malevolent demiurge to kind of even damn Adam and Eve somehow. Actually, I think it was talking about sexual intercourse, that the serpent actually introduced the idea of sexual intercourse in the human race. And I think Hippolytus talks about it. He talks about another heretic by the name of Justinus, and how the angel Nos was the serpent, and then he actually introduced adultery and sodomy into the human race. Pretty far out, yeah.
But the rabbis thought that the serpent actually had sex with Eve, and that's
right. It kind of goes
to on the origin of the world. I think it's what Cain is the offspring of the demiurge or something like that.
Right. I think where the Cain is the serpent, or the serpent is the beast, and then I mean you can go on with that research, in mind. But I mean, getting back to the idea about the world being a simulation, yeah, I do suspect that's probably the case. I know Philip K. Dick had his own revelations about it. I think he was even saying in Valis that time actually moves backwards in our world. Somehow, when you gain true knowledge, or the opposite of amnesia, I think it's amnesis or something like that. I think it's at the time.
Amnesis.
Yeah, there you
go. Right. So you actually move forward again. So it's weird. Like he actually thinks that we're literally ass backwards in this universe, and then once you get that pink beam of gnosis, you're somehow or you get that what if he calls it the homoplasmate, which is another term of the Holy Spirit, or the Christ Spirit, the Christ Force. You somehow are redeemed or saved, and then you revert back to you move forward back in time. So
right.
I don't know how true any of that is, but it's interesting.
Yeah, no kidding. And I was going to mention Saturn. So, Vanessa, who is Saturn to you, and do you see his effects today in this world, in these modern times? Demiurge, necessary force. What is your research? What has your research led you to?
Well, in typical Vanessa form, I typically go to the Sumerian deity who was associated with Saturn, which is Ninurta, which is actually a character who's very much not unlike Thor from the Norse mythology. He's got a magical mace that can turn into, I think it was turn into some sort of thing that he can ride on. I can't remember what it was. I think a giant scorpion or something. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm forgetting things. But That's and anyways, the myth of his that I'm most familiar with is the one where he travels up the mountain to fight a a giant bird that has stolen the tablet of destiny, which is this essentially magical MacGuffin from Sumerian mythology, which is supposed to, which I kind of read as the Torah in a mystical sense, as in like the book that's supposed to contain all knowledge. And it's a tablet that is supposed that the gods even are supposed to be bound by, and it's the thing that holds fate, not only of just the people, but not I'm stumbling over my words.
That's okay.
Not only of just humanity, but also the gods are bound by it, bound by the fate that's bound up in the tablet of destiny. And this giant evil bird, which in later versions is a seven-headed serpent, which I think is mythically interesting. But in the original version, it's a giant bird that came from the Abzu, which is translated literally is the sea of wisdom or sea of knowledge. And it like sprung out from the Abzu, fully formed, and it stole the tablets and went up to the top of a mountain and started like sending down plagues and hailfire and fire tornadoes and all sorts of ridiculous things. And so Ninurta took 7 of the most powerful warriors of the gods, and they went up to their fight, and Ninurta was the only one that survived, and he rescued the Tablet of Destinies. But the second he had his hands on it, rather than returning it, he immediately took the tablet and tried to like claim it for his own, only to be attacked by a monster turtle summoned by one of the other gods who got mad at him for it. So I kind of think of Saturn as this figure who, you know, tries to be the hero but can't get over his greed and want to manipulate the situation and ends up coming to a bad end.
That is demiurgic, maybe even in the Valentinian sense, but and also very interesting insight you had the other day. You were saying that we talk about Prometheus as this original Gnostic revealer or friend of mankind, but you've read that Inanna, long before Prometheus, is Prometheus, right?
Yeah, in the story Inanna and Enki, which Enki was the god of wisdom, she gets him drunk and steals the 7 tablets of wisdom of the gods called the Me, which are strange things because in some stories they are described as tablets, in some stories they are described as knowledge, and in some stories they're described as like articles of clothing, and I think they're all really symbolic for understandings of how the universe really functions. And in any case, she steals those from him by getting him drunk and essentially convincing him to give them to her, and then immediately goes on this river voyage down from the heavens to the earth to give the tablets to humanity, and during which Enki, after having sobered up, freaks out and keeps sending monsters to attack her boat, and each time the word is Sukul, which is essentially right-hand man, but in this case it's a woman, a warrior priestess named Ninchuber. She defends Inanna, and eventually they get back to Sumer, and she promptly gives all of the 7 tablets to humanity, which what's really interesting is when they describe the things that are given to humanity as a result, they're talking about all of the tools to build a civilization, both the positive things and the negative things. So it'll say like, you know, rousing speech and slanderous speech, the tools to build, the tools to destroy, like everything is like a counterbalance, which I find is really interesting, especially when you think of it in terms of the Kabbalah with like the the pillar of Jashin and Boaz, the pillar of mercy and the pillar of severity. Very much a here's your wisdom, but with it comes a price. There with great power comes great responsibility. Definitely comes to mind with that. So very much Inanna as the original Prometheus, but not just fire, all of the tools to build civilization.
Well, bless her. We need more of these characters, or find them out more in mythology and history to show us that that humans can be on the right side of the universe, and we do need help, and we can become as those who help us, those heroic beings that help us. So moving to you, Vance, actually, somebody did actually ask you this. Group Think Anyone asked, ever put a Subway in a toasted sandwich maker? That's a question. And we lost your voice, Vance. We can't hear you, Vance.
Okay, here I am.
Yes.
Did I ever put a Subway in a toasted sandwich maker?
In a toaster maker, yeah.
I can't say I have. I think the train cars are just like way too big,
Okay. Well, now that we have that out of the way, so we make sure we are answering questions in the chat. What is your take on Saturn, the Great Limiter, the Lord of Time, or what do you have? What is your experience? What has your experience been with Saturn? Did we lose Vance again?
Oh, I'm sorry.
For you.
My experience with Saturn.
Yeah, give it some Saturn.
Mostly through astrology. I used to do charts long ago, and I always think of Saturn as the guy, the limiter, the rules, the law, the restrictions. So it seems that the influence of Saturn is very heavy upon our society from either side of the political spectrum. Each side accuses the other one of imposing the Saturnian style rules, but the way I see it, and it may be because there's just too many people on the planet. And if you get too many people in too small a place, and the Earth is beginning to be small with respect to the billions of people that are here, the restrictions have to go on. Look at the cities. The most trouble, of course, is in the cities where the most people congregate. And guess where the most, imposition of the social restrictions has to be? It has to be in the cities. That's why every city tends to go towards the politics of restriction, no matter who's in charge. So that's my feeling about Saturn. One of the oldest gods, older than Zeus and all these other guys. Wasn't he one of the Cronus was one of the Titans, wasn't he?
Correct.
And so it's kind of like the universe may have evolved first, through rules and, the rules of the physical universe. And then somehow later consciousness was injected, and otherwise nothing would be aware of Saturn. That's what I'm thinking about Saturn right this second.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I remember, I think in Gurdjieff's, was it Tales of Beelzebub or Tales of the Grandfather to Beelzebub? But in Gurdjieff's cosmology, God was emanating and into the universe, and when he let time slip in, that's when God was thrown out, because Saturn imposed and basically restricted him. And here we are, incarnations of Saturn and whatever God matter left. I guess in the Kabbalah.
Time.
Yeah, time. Damn you, time. What about you? Go ahead.
Sorry. Something that made me think about something I forgot to mention when I was describing the Sumerian myth. Now, Ninurta is associated with the planet Saturn, and more to the point, his job as the champion of the gods was to carry out the rules in that tablet that he was trying to get back. So definitely, as the one who imposes fate, is definitely part of his job description in the Sumerian mythology.
Makes sense. And Alex, what is your take on Saturn? I know you've written in your blog at the ANI, you've written a lot about Chronos, Saturn, the Lord of Limits.
Right. Yeah, I wrote a couple articles associated with Saturn. I wrote an article called "The Secrets of Saturn." Then I wrote another article called Uranus, Lord of the Dome, or Uranus, if you want to be a little more technical. But Saturn, especially in astrology and in magic, he is sometimes, well, especially really in grimoires. I think he's associated with Samael. He's the first angel in the ordering, I guess, kind of like that connects to the planets. But also, in the occult, in a lot of the grimoires, you're supposed to actually invoke the different spirits associated with the planets. Then you have the angels also associated with them, and then you can also go into the Gnostics. You have all the different archons associated with the different planets as well. So yeah, there is a connection between Saturn, Kronos, Samael, Yaldabaoth, and then if you want to,
Jehovah's associated with Saturn.
Huh?
Jehovah's associated with Saturn.
Yeah. That was gonna say it. So, and I was kind of shocked to find this out. I was trying to do a little more research on child sacrifice in the Bible. You actually see in Ezekiel, I forget which chapter, but I know it's definitely in Ezekiel where it actually says that, the Yahweh will. Well, I mean, he's going to curse the Israelites for being rebellious. So he actually has their firstborn children actually thrown into the fires. So actually, Yahweh actually orders that, by the way. So, so I'm not sure if what's going on with him. I mean, he was kind of in a grumpy mood when he did decide to do that.
Baldy always
getting a little naughty there. So I mean, he is associated with other gods, obviously with Odin. I think Mercury is more connected with Loki, and then you have Thor. Trying to figure out who he's associated with in Judaism. I know he's definitely connected with what's that guy? Oh, the Babylonian god. Oh, Marduk. Yeah, for sure. I think that might be kind of connected. So Marduk, Mars, and I think it also connects with Mars and Yahweh too, because Yahweh is very much associated with being a god of judgment and being a warrior god, essentially. So, and Marduk is also very much like that. And so you have Yahweh, he basically storms the divine council. Even says so in Psalms 82 that he's going to judge the divine council and the gods. And because originally in Judaism, Elyon is actually the supreme deity, and then you have Yahweh is actually one of his sons, So that's like in the earliest forms of Judaism. So the roots of Judaism is very much polytheistic and pagan, actually. And that kind of connects with, Babylonian myths and Sumerian myths. But then you kind of go into the whole connection with Enki and Ea. A lot of people connect, Yahweh with Enki and Ea, but I think Enki is really more closer with Lucifer to me, and even Satan as a kind of like a trickster deity in a way. So I think they're all kind of connected. It's kind of weird how they all kind of intersect and intertwine. We can kind of connect them all together, But Saturn, I do suspect a lot of the Mesopotamian deities are very much could be very well just manifestations of Saturn, because Saturn is very much a god of time. He rules over our world. He rules our universe. He's a god of time. So everything is measured by time in this reality, So, I mean, whether Saturn is the devil or Yahweh, I think Saturn is. I think he's all these different deities. I think he's kind of rules over everything. It's really strange how it works. And then when you look at, the whole idea of child sacrifice, that connects to Kronos eating the gods, and then he's trying to, kill Zeus from preventing him from supplanting him as the chief deity. And of course, Zeus overthrows him, and then he's cast into Tartaros, which is the Greek version of hell. So yeah, I mean it's all connected somehow. But I know a lot of other people talk about Saturn too. I think Jordan Maxwell. I know he gets a lot of flack, but hey, he has some kind of interesting things to say. But also, if you look at Yahweh, especially in the Old Testament, he also seems to connect with being a volcanic god too. So, and he's also, he's always very much, very angry, always throwing fire and brimstone and destroying, Sodom and Gomorrah. And then you have all this, ideas of like, throwing virgin sacrifices in his volcano. So yeah, he's definitely connected to that as well. So in other words, I don't know, maybe Yahweh he obviously has some sort of, has a dark side to him. I mean, you can see that in Job, where he's like, he sends Satan, or Satan actually convinces him to punish Job just because for shits and giggles, just because, even though Job is such a nice and pious and righteous man, and yet Yahweh decides to fuck with him, so I don't know. It just doesn't seem that very nice to me.
Yeah, I had a thought on Saturn. Not you guys may recoil from this because I do. Individual consciousness depends on time and space, and of course, sensing where you are in time and space. Those are also functions of Saturn. So it could be that Saturn is the one who actually is at the root of individual consciousness, whereas at the same time, those restrictions actually create the form of consciousness that we currently experience. Not saying that's the only form, but time is the essence of consciousness, right? I mean, without time, could there be? No memory, no nothing.
Right. Yeah, because time is I think that's how we experience this reality. And if we go outside of time and space, I mean, it's something else. I mean, what that is, I guess you call eternity or hyperspace. But I mean, how can you really measure that?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, what we've been taught in the Greek myths, the Titans were bad and the gods were good, but that's not true. I mean, from a historical point, it simply was the Titans were these very ancient gods from very primordial cultures that these newer cultures came and supplanted and, of course, made them into demons like Abraxas, like wherever else, demonized those who have replaced. But in a way, these ancient titans, even on a metaphysical level, yeah, you're right, Vance. I mean, Prometheus is forethought. Gaia is the earth, untainted earth. And Irenaeus said that Sophia is Gaia. She is Terra. So maybe there's a little sleight of hand and the titans have been demonized and we have to learn. Let's look at the titans within us. Remember the titans? Ha, ha, ha. So.
Right.
Somebody had to say a bad joke, but I'm going to go toast a Subway now after this. Well, if nobody has anything else to say or a question, speak now. Again, this is the sort of the maiden voyage of, I just called it Heretics Anonymous. We'll hopefully get us all together in the future, mix in some guests, mix some heretics, and discuss, again, more conspiracy theory, parapolitics, ancient mythology, and sort of mix it up and, of course, tie it in with the gnosis that this world so much needs. And hopefully this gnosis will stop the world from being so divided and having the archons winning as they are winning, because they're huge and they're bigly, these archons. So anyway, guys, thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for everybody who joined for the chat, and let us know how we did. Good night, everyone.
Good night,
everybody. Hope you enjoyed it.